Here's our host, Chris Pierce.
Good morning and welcome to Viewpoint Television. My name is Chris Pierce. I'm glad to be with you here on this beautiful Sunday morning. We're in the middle of election season where we've got campaigns, door knocking, phone calls, and lots of mail going out to voters across the state. Today we've got two great candidates for office. First, we're going to be talking with Janet Stewart. She's the Democratic candidate for Attorney General. Janet, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. It's nice for you to have included me, and it's always great to see you.
Well, thank you very much. And just so everyone knows, we did invite Doug Peterson. He is the Republican candidate for Attorney General, but unfortunately he was unable to participate. But we decided we're going to carry on because I think it's important. This is an office, much like the auditor is, much like the treasurer is, that doesn't get a lot of coverage. So we want to make sure you guys get a shot. So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about Janet Stewart and why Janet Stewart would be the best Attorney General for Nebraska.
Okay, well, I have been an attorney for 39 years, so I want to make that clear up front. I grew up mostly in Omaha. I went to school here. I went to UNO and got a degree in economics, and then went on to Creighton Law School because I couldn't really get a good job in 1971 with an economics degree. After that, I had some state government experience and then came back to Omaha to be a corporate litigation manager for 26 years. And for the past 7 years, I've lived and practiced law around Fremont, and I have a juvenile court practice. I think the reason that I would be a great Attorney General is that I have a really broad and diverse background, and in my career, I've learned a lot of skills that will help the Attorney General's office do great legal representation and give quality legal services on a very cost-effective basis.
Okay, well, let's get into it. Now, the Attorney General and the Governor are very independent offices. What do you see the relationship between those two offices, and especially if there are two different political parties?
Well, that's the challenge, I think, Chris. I mean, I think the Attorney General is the office that gives the legal representation and advice to state government, and that includes the governor's office. The governor,
because if I'm not mistaken, the Attorney General really is the attorney for the state of Nebraska, correct?
That's very correct, and that's a good way to look at it, because the state of Nebraska is the client of the Attorney General, and of course you're representing the interests of all Nebraskans. Being in a different party of the governor would raise some challenges, but I think either way, I would be the best choice for the office. You know, if the Democrat Chuck Hasselbrook is elected, I know him well. I respect him. He respects me. I'm sure he will listen to my legal advice. And if the Republican were to win that race, I think they need someone like me to keep an eye on him.
Okay. So there's been a lot of news. In fact, today, or rather on Friday, there were some more hearings at the state legislature about good time, about Nino Jenkins. Since you're the top attorney, and let's talk about how the prisons currently are 157% over capacity. What do you see could be your role as Attorney General to help either of those, whether it be bringing down the population, with cases like Nino Jenkins? Where do you see the Attorney General's office fitting into that equation?
Well, I think it's a leadership role, because a lot of those decisions are made either by the governor's office or by the legislature in passing legislation. The Attorney General leads as to what would be the best for the administration of justice. One thing that I immediately can recommend is that we use more drug courts, because a lot of the overcrowding relates to people who are convicted, maybe nonviolent offenders who are incarcerated for drug crimes. And that's something the drug courts are designed to deal with. Another thing that I would recommend to the legislature is that they look at the sentencing laws for various nonviolent crimes and see if some adjustment might be in order.
Do you feel, because one of the themes that came out of some of those hearings was that the Attorney General's office was being relied upon for a interpretation of the Supreme Court ruling that dealt with good time and how sentencing is calculated. where do you see the fault? Is that with the was that with the Department of Corrections, or do you think that started back with the Attorney General's office? Where do we kind of? I mean, I'm sure there's blame to be shared by all,
Correct.
but given that the Attorney General is the attorney for the entire state, including the Department of Corrections, shouldn't there be a little more skepticism on that office, though, in this particular situation?
That's a good question, Chris. I think the underlying non-compliance was done on the part of the Department of Corrections. I mean, I believe a decision had been made incorrectly not to follow that Supreme Court law. Also, I believe the Attorney General's office could have been more proactive in following up. And they sent the opinion over to the Department of Corrections, asked were there any questions. There was some communication breakdowns, but I think the Attorney General has more of a responsibility than that. I mean, you just can't send an opinion over. I think you have to follow up the chain of command at the agency and make sure the people who are ultimately accountable are aware of the law they have to comply with. And in my view, that would include the governor, because there's a statute in Nebraska that says the governor is responsible to let the Attorney General know if an agency is not complying with the law, and you have to make sure the governor knows about it in order to let you know. So those would be my take on the matter.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. Earlier this week, the Supreme Court decided not to hear 5 appeals from 5 states on same-sex marriage.
Yes.
So in effect, the lower circuit court, federal circuit court's rulings, which were all that those same-sex marriage bans were unconstitutional, therefore they're legal. So suddenly, those 5 states now it's legal to same-sex marriage, which brings the states to 30 now across the country.
That's what I understand.
Now here's the niche for Nebraska. Nebraska currently has a marriage just between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
But we've also had a case just recently, Sue Strasser, who was legally married to her partner in Iowa, and they moved to moved to Omaha to try to get a driver's license, and was refused as Attorney General, as the attorney for the state. First of all, where do you feel if Nebraska was ever challenged, how would, as Attorney General, could you defend that constitutional amendment? If so, or if not, let us know that. And then, where do you see Nebraska's relationship with other states when we don't recognize legal marriages in other states if those people move to Nebraska?
Okay, that's a very good question, and we actually hear that a lot. I mean, the thing that I think Nebraskans maybe don't all understand is actually the Nebraska amendment to our Constitution was challenged. It was held to be unconstitutional by a federal district court judge, and it was appealed to the 8th Circuit, which reversed the district judge and said that Nebraska's law was constitutional. Now, that particular case was decided by a 3-judge panel, and it was not, there was no effort to make it reviewed further by the full panel. And because something has happened since then, there's a question where the law is still good law or not. I mean, there's been an intervening United States Supreme Court opinion that struck down the Federal Defense of Marriage Act. And so that's something that will have to be looked at very closely in the event litigation has ever filed. There was a pending case that had been brought to the Nebraska Supreme Court, and that court decided it wasn't quite ready for resolution and dismissed it. So that may come back. Now, you ask about the driver's license case, and to me that's kind of very different, because I don't think that it was necessary to look at the Defense of Marriage Amendment to decide that, because the lady in question had been legally married in another state. And
but she showed her marriage license in Iowa as proof of name change.
Yes.
And they said, well, we don't recognize that.
That's correct. That's what they said.
So in essence, they don't recognize that you were ever married in Iowa.
Yeah, and they didn't have to do that, I don't think. I mean, I don't know if there's any pending litigation or if that's something that's going to be decided by a court here in Nebraska, but I do know that what they were doing was they were going to issue a new driver's license, and what they needed for that was not a proof of a legal marriage. I think what they needed was a proof of a legal name change.
Right.
And the marriage in Iowa would be a legal name change in that state. And I also understood, I thought I read that she had a United States passport that had been issued in her new name, and I believe it's difficult to understand how that would not be adequate proof of a legal name change.
So let's switch gears one more time. Some, and even here in Nebraska, are talking about perhaps the legalization or decriminalization of marijuana. Our neighbors in Colorado have done it. Really haven't had a whole lot of problems with it. Where do you stand on an issue? Would you support a legislation similar to Colorado?
Well, I think that's a public policy question, and that would be decided by the legislature. And, you know, I would encourage parties who have an interest in that to, you know, approach the legislature. I do think there are law enforcement implications.
Right, and the reason why I asked that, just as a follow-up, is because you talked about, you know, we hear about prison overcrowding and what, you know, for what reasons we're really sending people to prison. Is having a joint in your pocket worth going to prison for? And in some states it is. In some states, well, that's not a big deal. So it's sort of an enforcement and issue. So what you're saying is really you don't have an opinion on it?
Well, I'll say this. I mean, I think it's for the legislature to decide, and there are law enforcement issues that need to be explored with county prosecutors and law enforcement. There is in the panhandle, they're having some problems with resources out there because they've had an increase in their drug prosecutions, and so that's part of the problem. The other thing is I can share from my own personal experience. I've been working in the juvenile court for some time with families and children, and I have concerns about the total legalization of marijuana because I see that it hurts families and it certainly isn't good for children.
Well, let's stay with that because my next question has to do, because your website does talk about your commitment to the advocacy for families and children. What I'd like to know is, would you be willing to support legislation that would mandate criminal charges to parents who are accused or found guilty of either physical or psychological abuse of the children to where they have to be removed from the home? Would you support legislation that makes that a true criminal offense with possible jail time? Yeah,
I do think that there are laws on the books that would criminalize some of those acts. You know, I think there's a lot of public policy issues that go into that. I mean, you want to try to help a family to the extent that you can, and that's the purpose of a juvenile court setting. So once again, I think that's something that interested parties should go to their state senator and, you know, make their wishes known there. All
right, we're going to give you 1 minute for a last-minute pitch to the voters and why you should be not only the next Attorney General, but the first female Attorney General.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Chris. Janet Stewart, running to be your Attorney General. I do think electing a woman to be Nebraska's next Attorney General would be very helpful. I know there's many people who are interested in having a woman serve on the Board of Pardons. Nebraska's Board of Pardons has 3 constitutional officers. One is the Attorney General, and there has not been a woman serving on that board since KOR, which has been 20 years ago or more. And so I think bringing a woman's viewpoint to that board would be great. I also have a lot of knowledge in how to manage agencies, lawyers, professionals, and I'm trained to see gender issues which I could remedy as a woman office holder. And so I really don't expect everybody to vote for me just because I'm a woman, but just to consider whether that's something that would help Nebraska and whether it's time.
Well, I think there's always a great reason to create history. I'm a big history buff, and being the first woman is making history. We want to thank Janet Stewart. Remember, she's the Democratic candidate for Attorney General. And when we come back, we'll have Joni Craighead, who is a state senator candidate for LD6.
Selling cookies is about
the big picture.
You have to have a goal.
A big goal.
Something you and your team
want to do in the world.
We choose
where the money goes.
A trip, an adventure,
helping people out.
Helping a lot of people out.
And about the money,
we are responsible for it.
Handling it, managing it,
tracking it,
doing great things with it.
This is business.
Girl business.
The biggest girl-run business
in the world.
Did you think this was just about cookies?
My son, the Cub Scout, helped raise money to make camping safer.
My son, the Cub Scout, stood up to the school bully.
My son, the Cub Scout, volunteers at the homeless shelter.
My sons, the Boy Scouts, helped clean up after the devastating flood.
My son, the Eagle Scout, helped save a man's life.
My sons, the Eagle Scouts, are defending our nation.
My son, the Eagle Scout, became a doctor,
civil engineer,
police chief, wonderful husband and father,
state senator,
JoinScouting2012.org. Do you know about 211? It's help for an elderly relative or a troubled teen, family counseling, or job training. Instead of hunting for phone numbers, dial 211. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, talk to someone who will find the local information you need. United Way and its statewide partners want you to get connected and get answers. Dial 211 or go online at ne211.org.
Listen, I think it's time we had that talk. Now, I can tell that you really like this girl, but I think you kids move way too fast. I just need to know that you're using protection.
Dad.
So buckle up, son. And no sex!
Welcome back to A Viewpoint with Chris Pierce. I'm glad we're at. I want to again thank Jenna Stewart for being on our show. I now have another great person that I know, a good friend of mine actually, and she is running for LD6, and her name is Joni Craighead. She's running for the state senate. Joni, thank you for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris, for having me here.
Well, I always try to do things for good for other people. One of these days I'll be on someone else's show, maybe.
Mine, maybe.
There you go. Viewpoint with Joni Craighead next week. All right, Joni, you're running for LD6. I have a question for you before we even start.
Okay.
As we all know, Senator John Nelson became lieutenant governor.
He did.
And Governor Hyman decided that he's not going to pick a replacement yet. Do you, if you win, do you think that he'll appoint you before the January?
I have no idea what the governor's going to do.
Would you accept if he offered it?
Yes, but I got to win first, Chris.
Oh, okay. If she wins, she says. All right, at least she's.
I do.
All right. Let's get down to business. All right. Some argue that Nebraska's good time law is one of the things that's creating 157% overcrowding of our prisons. What do you plan to do as a state senator to address this overcrowding issue so that we're not releasing people like Nino Jenkins?
Well, first and foremost, we need to protect the citizens of Nebraska. I believe that people in prison need to earn their good time. I don't think someone should be incarcerated for 20 years and automatically get 10 whacked off for good time. I think good time needs to be earned. I don't like our system the way it is, and I definitely think it needs to be changed, so I would vote to repeal that good time law.
Okay, so are you saying that you would allow a good time program but not an automatic program?
Absolutely. Okay. I think people in prison can earn good time based on education, training, resume writing, communication skills, all those things that will help them to become better citizens once they re-enter society.
Okay. You know, when it comes to our K through 12 education system, we've got sometimes up to 4 layers of bureaucracy, and each of them have a tax levy. Would you be a proponent of getting rid of maybe some of those and perhaps maybe the learning community?
Well, I do believe that bureaucracy eats up tax money. I am very willing to look at the entire picture here to decide what we need to do. It's something I need to learn more about. I know a lot, but I need to learn more. I think we need to put it all on the table. I would be very open to a consideration of what we need to do. Learning community, some people say it works, some people say it doesn't work, and I would be very willing to look and then make my decision once I am more educated on that issue.
You know, one of the things on your website, you talk about tax relief, you talk about tax reform. Would you support reduction in the number of sales tax exemptions? Now, these are categories including political fundraisers that do not have to pay sales tax. And in some instances, that's a $3 billion loss to the state each year. Would you be willing to look at reducing those categories, and if so, which ones? And if you're not, why not?
I think we need to put everything on the table. We have high property taxes, gas taxes, income tax, sales tax, even our death tax is high. So I think we need to put everything on the table. I am willing to look at all of the taxes that are there, and then based on a business background, make the best decision I can for the taxpayers of Nebraska.
Okay. So last session, there was a move to expand Medicaid. It didn't work. Obamacare or Affordable Care Act, whichever way you want to say, has really made its way through the courts and it's survived. It's going to stay for a while. Where do you see Nebraska going in the future with either implementing Obamacare, or should Nebraska go on its own?
I, first of all, will say that I do believe that everyone deserves health care, but I think we need to look outside the box. rather than the bill that was introduced last year and it was not passed. The cost of Medicaid per person is $8,500 a year. We could buy a private pay insurance policy for each person for that amount. Nebraska spends $600 million a year plus $1.2 billion of federal funding for a total of $1.8 billion on Medicaid each year. Medicaid is growing faster than the rate of inflation, and more people are on Medicaid each year than is projected. If we expand Medicaid also in the state of Nebraska, we are going to need to look at the providers. We don't have enough providers to meet the needs of all the people that are there. Now, as I mentioned, I think we need to look outside the box. One program that's been very effective is the Intermountain Exchange in Idaho and Utah. It serves 1.1 million people and encompasses an area of 450 miles. Pretty similar to the demographics in Nebraska. Okay, it's a private, nonprofit organization. There is no government control. It operates its own insurance plan. It trains its providers. It also teaches the providers how to give the best care and to save money. There are 18 clinics. It's saved the taxpayers $250 million.
Now, is this something you think Nebraska could adopt or tweak a little bit?
Yes, I think it's something that we need to consider. And I'm thinking, if Utah, with the lowest healthcare costs in the country, can do this, why can't we in Nebraska? We can do something similar to this and have a very good program meeting the needs of the people in our state.
You know, you talk about meeting the needs of the state. You know, Nebraska has had a tradition of very low unemployment when you look at across the country. We've been very fortunate that way. But one part of our community, and that's North Omaha, and I know you don't represent North Omaha, but you are part of the Omaha community. What can you do as a state senator, or what ideas do you have to spur some economic development to create those jobs in that community?
That's a good question. I think we need to look at economic development across the state. I think we need more businesses. I think we need good paying jobs in the state of Nebraska. There are a lot of companies, this would not be an increase in business, but there are a lot of companies in the state of Nebraska who cannot meet the needs of that cannot fill the jobs that they have. Examples, welders. There's a company in the middle part of Nebraska, which is not North Omaha, but they constantly have need for welders. I think one thing, education is the great equalizer, and I think we should continue to educate and train people, whatever part of Omaha or the state of Nebraska they live in, so that they can get a good job, which in turn will then increase economic development because there is more money to spend.
Okay. You know, on a different topic, you talk about jobs, but one of the things I want to talk to you is about the CIR. There has been several, Senator Lathrop led a team to try to do some revamping of that. But Omaha seems to have a problem with the CIR because we seem to always be having to go to the CIR, and Omaha as a city loses a lot, and it costs the taxpayers a lot of dollars. But that's something that each party gives up because they can't strike. We're talking police and fire. Do you think the CIR is it meeting its burden? Do you think there needs to be some reforms, or maybe CIR is not the answer at all?
Well, I know that the CIR has been modified in the past few years, and I know that there was another bill that was introduced that did not pass in the legislature fairly recently. Since the modifications of the CIR, I don't know if we've given it enough time yet to learn if it is effective or not. This is something we need to watch, and if we need to in the future, I think maybe we should reform it again. But again, I'm kind of a let's wait and see attitude on this one. So
what you're saying is because the changes are sort of new, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's see how it works. And the other thing is we've had all three of the major unions in the city of Omaha have been under contract, so we haven't had that need. Okay. Let's talk about minimum wage. It's on the ballot, Initiative 425.
Right.
It calls for the raising of the Nebraska minimum wage to $9 an hour over 2 years. But there's also some talk, and not saying that'll happen, but of raising the federal minimum wage to $10.10. Do you support the raising of the minimum wage to $9? And do you see that being the limit for Nebraska, or do we foresee problems if the federal minimum wage goes even beyond that?
I believe that 425 will pass. I also believe that most full-time employees in the state of Nebraska make more than $9 an hour starting wage. Where I see a possible difficulty with this are students looking for a first-time job or college kids who are part-time, and possibly businesses will not be able to pay that increased minimum wage, so those jobs may disappear.
Okay, so let me spur that off a little bit, because one of the things that legislators do, we've covered a lot of different topics. There's a lot of committees in the state legislature. What are the committees that you would really like to be part of that you think you could do the most good?
I would love to be on Appropriations, which is a 5-day-a-week committee. If I'm not there, I would like to serve on Banking and Insurance, and also Veterans and Military Affairs. I have a great interest in both of those. Of course, real estate and being a realtor, that falls under the Banking Committee, so I'm very interested in that. And with Veterans and Military Affairs, my first husband, Mike Craighead, I was able to prove that his illness and death was due to a cancer caused by Agent Orange when he served in Vietnam. When I also worked at the Nebraska Business Development Center, I worked with the veterans groups there, so I have a great interest and a passion for both of those areas.
So basically what you're telling me is you want to be a busy senator.
I do.
Good.
I want to get there and make a difference.
Well, let's give Joni the last 60 seconds of the show, and Joni, tell them why those that live in LD6 should vote for you.
I want to grow the economy. I want to reduce taxes and provide educational opportunities for our students. I want to make Nebraska an even better place to live than it is today. I have a wide variety for career background, from medical to retail business ownership to published author, real estate developer, and realtor. I have a bachelor's degree in medical technology from the University of Nebraska Medical Center and a master's degree in public administration from the University of Kansas. I do want to make a difference. I know I can make a difference, and I hope that you will vote for me, Joni Craighead, on November 4th.
Well, Joni, I want to thank you for coming by. I appreciate your time. And for whoever you vote for whatever legislative district, make sure you get the vote out. With that, I want to thank Joni. I also want to thank again Janet Stewart, the Democratic candidate for Attorney General. That's our show this week. I want to make sure everyone knows we have just launched our new website, and it's right there at the bottom of your screen, where you can go and watch any of the episodes of Viewpoint with Chris Pierce right on our website anytime you want. The other thing I want to do is I want to give a shout out to my good friends Mike and Dee Austin and just say, gotcha. All right, guys, that's it for us this week. Remember, now next week we're going to have Congressman Lee Terry on the show. All right, guys, remember, everyone has a point of view. Respect it.